all right,
Yeah.
that just happened, kind of. There wasn't truly like a sense of anything to take away from the walk by.
Yeah. Do you know what happened to Fee and Kelsey Plum?
Just that they had travel issues, and I know they got on that plane, and so from there, I haven't been told exactly what the issue was as far as what led to them not.
That reaction right there tells you everything you need to know about where we are right now. It's kind of time to panic. Those aren't the words of some casual observer or hot take artist on Twitter. That's coming from someone who's been inside these rooms, who knows exactly what needs to happen before tip-off, and who can see the calendar pages flying off the wall while both sides are still miles apart. We're looking at over 100 players in free agency limbo, 2 expansion teams that don't even know the rules of their own draft, a schedule that's been released like everything's fine, while behind closed doors, executives are preparing for scenarios that include the word delayed, and at the center of all of it is a negotiation that's exposing every crack in the foundation of how this league was built.
You're like, wait, like the question of preparation comes into play, because you're like, this is a simple call to make. Where are we going so wrong?
Yeah, where's the disconnect?
Right. And it brings me back to that game against the Fever and the Sun. And again, the fact that there was, even within that game, there was no consistency with the calls. And like Marina checking Caitlyn to the floor, like we can laugh, like Marina is a crash out queen, and I have the utmost respect for Marina, and I've covered her. I think her style, like her aggressiveness, I really love that, because that's kind of like how I am in my real life. I'm a very...
Here's what makes this CBA negotiation different from every other one in WNBA history. For the first time, the players actually have leverage, real leverage. Not theoretical leverage based on hope and potential, but concrete leverage built on ratings that jumped 40%, sold-out arenas, and a rookie class that brought 20 million viewers to a single college championship game. But that leverage comes with a massive complication that's never existed before, because while the players are sitting across the table from league executives trying to negotiate their future, some of those same players are simultaneously running their own competing league. Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier aren't just WNBA superstars anymore. They're unrivaled co-founders with their own business interests, their own broadcast deals, their own player contracts to worry about, and that creates a conflict of interests that would be absolutely unthinkable in any other professional sports league.
The conflict of interest.
You probably heard like my opinions on it as well. It's because I actually don't think that any of these women have like poor intentions, but there is clearly there is a conflict of interest, and this is something that we have never seen in any other league. And it's like, even when you talk about the NBA, when you talk about any of the major male sports leagues, they are not playing in off-season leagues. They are not allowed to do anything where they are getting paid. They can go play in the Drew League for free if they show up.
Well, I love that you're bringing this up, because guess what, girl? That league pays them how much money, and their season is how long? Like, they've always had exclusivity. The W has never had exclusivity.
Think about what she just said. The WNBA was founded as a summer league, not because summer was the optimal time for women's basketball, not because it created the best development pathway from college to pro, but because NBA owners had empty arenas sitting there doing nothing for 3 months, and David Stern saw a business opportunity. That decision in 1997 is why we're in this mess right now. Men coming out of college get an entire summer league to prepare for their professional careers. They get training camps, they get preseason games, they get time to adjust. Women get 2 weeks between their college season ending and WNBA training camp starting, 2 weeks to make the jump from college to the best basketball league in the world. And because it's a summer league, because it was always designed to fit around the NBA's schedule rather than stand on its own, the WNBA has never demanded exclusivity from its players. Never. From day one, Val Ackerman and David Stern told players they could go play overseas in the winter. They could dilute their brands across multiple leagues, risk injuries in foreign countries, and come back exhausted for the WNBA season.
Because if I'm an owner too, if we want to get to the point where the women are making $2, $3, $10 million salaries a year, if I'm an owner, I'm not paying you that, and knowing that in the off season you could get injured, also getting paid by from somebody else.
No, and I don't disagree with you on that point, but again, it goes back to the foundation of the WNBA and the owner, the them founding it as a summer league. This is a summer league. Like even that concept, like Diana's talked about it, how great it would be to play basketball in during the traditional basketball window. Even think about the transfer of college talent to the WNBA. Men have an entire summer. They have an entire summer league.
And there's the core tension. If you want to be taken seriously as the premier women's basketball league in the world, you have to act like it. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and say, we're not a summer league anymore, we're not a side project, we're not a developmental league for overseas basketball, we're the destination. But here's the problem. How can you demand exclusivity when your max base salary is $1 million? How can you tell Breanna Stewart, or Napheesa Collier, or Jewel Lloyd that they can't play anywhere else when they're in the prime of their careers, when their window to make money playing basketball is closing, when overseas teams are offering them $300,000 for 3 months of work? You can't, not yet. And that's why Unrivaled exists. Not because Stewart and Collier are trying to undermine the WNBA, but because the WNBA's salary structure has never caught up to the value these players actually create, so they built their own solution. 30 Miami-based players, 3-on-3 basketball, 6-figure salaries plus equity, all during the WNBA offseason, when players would normally be in Turkey or Russia or China anyway.
Sign a contract today and those that don't. And if there was that huge divide, the vote on the, strike authorization wouldn't have been so largely in favor. So I think, again, there's nuance to that conversation of fracturing. And if there was actually a heavy fracture, I think we would have seen a difference in that vote. And I also think, again, having conversations about why a player feels this way versus a...
Now we get to the meeting that happened Monday in New York. The one that was supposed to be the breakthrough moment, league executives, team owners, and player representatives all in the same room for the first time since negotiations started. Breanna Stewart and Napheesa Collier were supposed to be there. They're two of the three most vocal players on CBA issues, along with Nneka Ogwumike, but they had travel issues coming from Miami, where they were playing in unrivaled games. Think about the optics of that for a second. The two players leading the charge for a transformational CBA, the two players who've been most outspoken about getting this deal done right, couldn't make it to the most important negotiating session because they were committed to their own competing league. That's not a criticism of Stewart or Collier. They didn't create this conflict. The WNBA's decades of undervaluing its players created this conflict, but it exists, and you can't ignore it.
And so from there, it's kind of like you maybe assess that the meeting's ending or close to ending or has ended. And the players that came out, first it was Steph Dolson from the Washington Mystics, and then it was a small group, and it was Nneka, Bree Turner, and Alicia Clark, and Terry Carmichael Jackson on the WNBPA. Oh my God, why am I blanking on her exact title? But like the executive of leader of the WNBPA.
Yeah. Also, Jaren Jackson's mother, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's her like.
Here's what happened when the players who did make it to that meeting walked out. First came Stephanie Dolson from the Mystics. Then Nneka Ogwumike, Breanna Turner, Alicia Clark, and Terry Carmichael Jackson from the Players Association, and their faces weren't angry. They weren't celebrating. They were just blank, indifferent. Like they just sat through a meeting that went exactly how they expected it to go, which is to say nowhere productive. The league had shown up without a proposal. Think about that. After months of back and forth, after the players put their comprehensive proposal on the table, after all the public statements about wanting to get this done, the league walked into the most important meeting of the negotiation and said, "We're here to talk, but we don't have anything new to offer you." That's a negotiating tactic. It's pressure. It's the league saying we're not going to be rushed into anything, we're going to take our time, and if that means the season gets delayed, well, that's going to hurt you more than it hurts us. Because the players are the ones with limited career windows. The players are the ones who need game checks. The owners can wait.
Like, I try to gather all the thoughts and bring context to it, right? Yeah. And so I think it's clear based on the outward communication that there are varying opinions across the board. There are varying communication styles and varying beliefs as to what needs to be done and their desire to play the season. I think all players, what hasn't wavered, at least in the conversations I've had, is every player wants to play a season. Every player wants the season to start on time. That has not been a question or been differed player to player from those that I've spoken to. I think where some difference comes in is there are players at all.
And this is where it gets really complicated. Because while the public narrative has been about player unity, about everyone standing together for a transformational deal, the reality is more nuanced. There are 144 players in the WNBA, and they're not all in the same position. They're not all at the same stage of their careers. They don't all have the same leverage or the same priorities. Natasha Cloud is a veteran whose best years are behind her. Her window to maximize earnings is closing fast. She's been one of the most vocal players about fighting for a transformational deal, about not settling, about being willing to strike if necessary. And that makes complete sense for where she is in her career. This might be her last chance to be part of a CBA negotiation that fundamentally changes the league. But what about the younger players? What about the rookies who just got drafted, who are trying to establish themselves, who are thinking they've got 10 or 12 years ahead of them to fight these battles? For them, missing a season or even delaying the start of the season has different stakes. They might be more willing to take a smaller step forward now and fight for more in the next CBA.
Obviously, the league in some aspects is trying to push forward as usual, and like they released the schedule, and some players were like, yeah, this is exciting, I can't wait to play, and other players are like, what are you doing? Like, we don't even have. So there's some things where it's like full steam ahead, but then you have other things, which is maybe you giving us a lift under the hood a little bit, is like, oh, if we don't give you the rules for this expansion draft, if we don't have this, you can't even think about free agency. You can't even think about what players you want to try to get for your team. You don't know how much cap space you're going to have. So it's like you're halting all of that completely, yet, hey, this is the schedule. Yeah.
Right. This is why it's like the league putting that schedule out and then being like, oh yeah, like we had to do this so that our sponsor.
Here's what we know about what's actually on the table. The union wants to remove the core designation, which currently allows teams to retain players even when they become free agents by matching any offer. They want changes to restricted free agency rules. Because right now, by the time a WNBA player has full control over where she plays, she's pushing 30 years old. In the NBA, guys have that autonomy by their mid-20s. They want league pass for free, they want all-star game tickets. They want better travel accommodations, expanded rosters, a developmental league, and yes, they want more money. Significantly more money. Because the current max base salary of $1 million is embarrassing when you're generating the kind of revenue and attention that Caitlin Clark or Ajah Wilson or Breanna Stewart generates. But here's what the league keeps coming back to. Sustainability. That word gets thrown around in every statement, every press conference, every negotiating session. We want to make sure this is sustainable. We can't commit to numbers that might look good today, but could hurt the league 5 years from now, and there's some validity to that concern. The WNBA has never been profitable as a standalone entity. It's been subsidized by the NBA for 28 years. Attendance is up, ratings are up, sponsorship deals are bigger than ever, but we don't actually know if the league is making money because the financials aren't public. The revenue waterfall is split between the league, the teams, and the NBA's remaining ownership stake in ways that nobody outside those boardrooms fully understands. So when the league talks about sustainability, they're not entirely wrong to be cautious. But when players hear sustainability, what they hear is we're going to use the same excuses we've used for 3 decades to keep paying you less than you're worth. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. The league is in a better financial position than it's ever been, but it's not printing money the way the NBA is. The players deserve significantly more than they're getting, but there are legitimate questions about how much more the league can afford to commit to right now. And neither side trusts the other enough to have an honest conversation about those numbers, because the league won't open its books, and the players have no reason to believe the poverty claims after watching the NBA announce a $76 billion media rights deal. What makes this particularly messy is the expansion situation. Portland and Toronto are joining the league in 2026, that's next year. And right now, neither of those teams knows the rules of the expansion draft they're supposed to participate in. Neither do the existing teams, who need to know how many players they can protect before they can make any decisions about free agency. The league hasn't told anyone whether it's going to be 4 protected players or 5, whether the rules will be the same as they were for the Golden State Valkyries expansion draft, or different because there are 2 teams this time. And they can't finalize those rules until they know what the CBA is going to look like, because if core designation gets removed, that changes everything about how expansion works. So you've got this impossible knot where the CBA negotiations are holding up the expansion draft rules, and the expansion draft rules are holding up free agency. And free agency is holding up roster construction, and all of it is supposed to somehow get resolved in time for training camp to start on time in April. It's not going to happen. Multiple executives have said privately that if this doesn't get done by early February, the season will be delayed. And we're already past mid-January with no deal in sight. The league released the schedule anyway, acting like everything's fine, because that's part of their negotiating strategy. Put pressure on the players by pretending the train is leaving the station with or without them. But the players voted 99% in favor of strike authorization. That's not a close vote. That's not a fractured union. That's a statement that says we're willing to let the season be delayed, if that's what it takes to get this right. And the league knows it. So where does this actually end? Nobody knows for sure, but here's what seems most likely. The season gets delayed by a few weeks. Both sides eventually come to the table with real proposals instead of positioning statements. The players get some version of what they're asking for, but not everything. Salaries go up significantly, but not to the transformational levels some players are hoping for. Some roster and travel improvements get implemented. Core designation probably stays but gets modified. And everyone agrees to revisit the big structural questions in the next CBA negotiation. That's not the transformational deal that Natasha Cloud and Nneka Ogwumike are fighting for, but it might be the realistic deal that gets a season played while setting up a better fight next time around. And for players like Kelsey Plum and Nafisa Collier, who couldn't even make it to the meeting because of their unrivaled commitments, that might be the best outcome available right now. Because here's the hard truth that nobody wants to say out loud. The WNBA is in a better position than it's ever been, but it's still not in a position to give the players everything they deserve. The foundation was built wrong. The league was structured as a summer afterthought instead of a standalone premier product. The salary structure was designed for a league that drew 3,000 fans per game, not 15,000. The business model assumed the NBA would subsidize losses forever, not that the WNBA would need to stand on its own. You can't fix 28 years of structural problems in one CBA negotiation. You can make progress. You can take real steps forward. You can set up the next negotiation to be even stronger, but you can't transform everything overnight, no matter how much leverage you have, no matter how much the players deserve it. So the question isn't whether the players are right to fight for more. They absolutely are. The question is whether they're willing to take a significant step forward now, knowing there's still a long way to go, or whether they're willing to delay the season, risk the momentum the league has built, and bet everything on getting a transformational deal right now. And that's a question every player has to answer for herself, based on where she is in her career, what her financial situation looks like, and how much faith she has that the next CBA negotiation will be any better than this one. There's no wrong answer, just different priorities, different timelines, different stakes. What we do know is this: the meeting on Monday didn't solve anything. The league and the players are still far apart. Free agency is frozen. The expansion draft is in limbo. And the clock is ticking toward a season that might not start on time. Whether that's a crisis or just leverage depends on which side of the table you're sitting on. But for the fans who fell in love with this league last season, who bought tickets to see Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and Paige Bueckers, who finally started paying attention after decades of ignoring women's basketball, for them it's definitely starting to feel like panic time. Because the worst possible outcome for the WNBA right now isn't players getting paid less than they deserve. It's losing the momentum they finally built after 28 years of trying. Let me know in the comments, Should the players hold out for a transformational deal even if it delays the season, or take the best deal they can get right now and fight for more next time? Because I genuinely don't know what the right answer is, and I don't think anyone else does either.